In these problems, we're using the Pythagorean Theorem to solve sides in right triangles. And remember, the Pythagorean Theorem says a squared plus b squared equals c squared. And c is the hypotenuse. And that is the side, the longest side in a right triangle. And that's the side that's opposite from the right angle. So in this case, it's this side right here that's the hypotenuse. The other two sides are A and B. It doesn't really matter which one you put in for A, which one you put in for B. It all comes out the same anyway. In this question, it says find the length of the hypotenuse of the right triangle below and round to the nearest whole number. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take 6 and 17 and plug them in for A and B and then solve for C. So 6 squared plus 17 squared equals c squared. Well, 6 squared is 36. 17 squared is 289 equals c squared. So we'll add those two together. We get 325 equals c squared. But that 325 is not our answer. That's what c squared is. The hypotenuse is just plain old c. So we have to take the square root of both sides here. And the square root of 325 is something like, well, it says round to the nearest whole number, so c would equal 18. Let's try another one. This one says, use the Pythagorean theorem to solve for x. And the first thing you should do when you look at a problem like this is figure out which side is the hypotenuse. And the hypotenuse is going to be the longest side, and it's going to be the side that's opposite of the right angle. So our hypotenuse is 7, so that's C, and we could call this A, and we could call this B. So when we plug it into a squared plus b squared equals c squared, it's important to know which one is your hypotenuse. So let's go ahead and do that. We've got A is the square root of 18, so square root of 18 squared plus, and I'm going to plug in x for b, so x squared instead of b squared, and then equals c squared. C is 7 squared. Okay. Now let's work this out. The square root of 18 squared is simply 18. Now we have plus x squared equals, and 7 squared is 49. Now we want to get x alone. We're trying to solve for x. So I'm going to subtract 18 first. And we get x squared equals 31. And take the square root of both sides. And we're going to get x equals the square root of 31. And maybe that's an appropriate form to leave the answer in, or if you want to figure out a decimal, it's approximately 5.567. All right, one more. It says the length of one of the legs in a right triangle is 6 inches. So the leg is the side that's not the hypotenuse. Could be A or B. If the hypotenuse is 8 inches long, find the length of the other leg. So just so as not to get confused, I like to draw a picture. So there's my right angle. Here's my hypotenuse. They say that's 8 inches. One of the legs is 6 inches, and we're going to find that guy. So here's A, B, and C, and I'm going to plug it into my formula. A squared, let's call that x squared, plus b squared, b is 6 squared, equals c squared, which is 8 squared. So x squared plus 36 equals 64. So we subtract 36. We get x squared equals 28. And we take the square root of both sides. We get x squared equals square root of 28. And x equals the square root of 28. And if we want to, let's see, 28 is 7 times 4, so this would be x equals 2 times the square root of 7. Or you could punch that into the calculator and figure out a decimal equivalent. But that's how to use the Pythagorean theorem to solve sides in triangles.